Welcome. And first of all, really thanks to Tapio and Ollie for the invitation to speak to you guys, to come here and share our story a little bit and the way we prepare for Javelin, and we hope you enjoy it and learn something, and if not, then it's a good story. So we like to share a little bit in three parts, I suppose, for the presentation. First of all, a little bit of introduction into how I started Javelin and my progression, and as I met Uva, basically what we had to change and what the type of things we focused on that led to the thrower that I am today. And the second part then is a little bit how we go about preparing the program all year through. I'll go into that a little bit more with our situation that we don't always spend a lot of time together, which has many challenges, but it's interesting how we make it work. And then the final part is a little bit about the sports psychology that I worked on this year that led me to these results, and as Michaela mentioned, got me to the top of the world this year. So here I am down here as a young athlete. I started actually a little bit similar to Uva, I guess. In the I grew up in the country, a little country town, and there wasn't really anybody to teach me Javelin, actually. I had a lot of talent and natural ability, speed, power, when I was little, and I started in sprinting and long jumping, actually. And I started Javelin a little bit later once I got to high school, because we didn't do it at a younger age, and my sister actually won the school carnival and brought a Javelin out to the farm to practice with. And I had a go at this, and in a little bit similar style, to take it out to the fields and try to throw it further and further each time. And that was my beginning into Javelin, similar with this backwards cross step. And I, at the age of 15, then I met my first Javelin coach. And I trained with him only about once a month. So he started then to put together a little bit of a run-up and correct footwork and things. And so in 2000, the year 2000, when I was 17, I had a PB of about 49 meters. And I moved away from my little town to finish my schooling in the town where my first coach was. And this pointer here. So coach 1, I started here, and you can see the progression there that I had with him. Probably looking back, technically, he didn't really set up a good foundation for me, but like I said, we put together some basics, a run-up, and I started training in the weight room and got stronger and stronger, and I threw further of a improvement of about 8 meters. Then I met my second coach, and probably spent a few too many years with him. As you can see, the progression really plateaued, and probably even the numbers there, around 58 to 59 meters, weren't really a true indication of the level I was at. I was really stuck at about 55 metres for a lot of that time. It was my first senior national team in 2006 for the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne. And obviously I had, big plans during that time. That was between the ages of 21 to 27 years old, which is really should be when you're reaching your peak of the career. But he really didn't have an idea of how to teach or throw javelin, and my improvement for that period of time was just over 1.5 meters. 2009 was a bit of a turning point, I suppose. I had missed the 2008 Olympic selection. I had a handful of B qualification standards, but they only took A standards from Australia. So I realised that I'm not getting anywhere with this coach I had. So I decided to leave, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. I went to the UK, actually. I'd been there the year before to train with Wilf Paish, who's no longer with us, but I just needed to get away, actually, from this guy. And as I don't know what would have it, fate, universe, whatever, during this period of time that I was away, I actually didn't really train that much. The intent when I left was to keep training, but I got distracted with other things. And in the meantime, my coach too had become the head coach of Athletics Australia Federation. So as I returned from my adventures overseas, I had to meet with him, and he suggested some options of what I wanted to do. I really didn't know what I was going to do for a coach. And he said that in 2010, a certain gentleman by the name of Hohn would be coming to Australia to coach. He had started to coach Jared Bannister, and out of all the so one of the options was to return to his training squad until Uwe arrived, and then I would transfer to Uwe. And out of all the options I had, I was excited about this one. So then I met Uwe, and you can see the difference that his coaching has made on my career. We started in 2010, and it was a little bit stressful time, but we got through it, and you can see the work there that I put in. He was away, started in China in 2011. So I spent a lot of time by myself just trying to put into place what he was teaching me. And as we met, I had given myself until the London Olympic Games. I was 30 years old, actually, by then. So as we met as I was 28, that was the time period I'd given myself to improve. And if I didn't, then I would finish. But as luck and hard work would have it, we improved, and the progression continues, and we hope it continues more. And I have to say, I am the winner over Tapio from the work with Uwe with a 10-metre improvement. However, it's taken 8 years and not 2 weeks. So obviously, as we first met, I had 10 years already of training history and a lot of technical bad habits that we had to work on. And also physically, I needed to change as an athlete. Actually, I thought I was pretty good then, but I wasn't. Wasn't too bad, yeah. So, yeah, before we get into specifically what we really needed to work on, we thought to put this little bit in just for Uwe to explain, I guess, his philosophy and his beliefs on and his approach to, with all his athletes, on the technical approach to Javelin.
Yeah, and first also one word to this first year stagnation. Like almost everywhere where I started to work, if it was in China or even before in with Polish guys, in India, in Australia with Bannister, I came and there was a lot of problems, health issues, and we had to work first on overcome this and stabilize. And we also said we give us one really year to change, to work only on technique, not on focus on any improvement.
Results.
In
Yeah.
competition results, yeah.
Yeah. Picture?
Picture. Like the most of you or everyone know these online videos from Jan, and I took it because it shows really the points which are also very important for me in my career and in my understanding of technique. If we look only for the impulse step, what the reason for it is once to get in the right position for the throw, to the optimal position, and also to accelerate into the throw, yeah. And to accelerate, we need to be active, yeah. So we have to pull from left and cross active forward. Yeah.
Next slide.
Next one. Landing, contact, right foot after cross step. Very important to keep the body back. I said yesterday, for me was very important to length the acceleration way, so from landing to release as long as possible. It's not should not be as long as possible, but as optimal as possible for each thrower, and to reach release speed over 33 meter per second. I think something was not too bad what I did, and he also, yeah. The second, or the little bit different, is that he turns a little bit more with his arm and his body position or shoulder position than I did. With the old Javelin was a little bit more delicate to throw, so I tried more to line up always into the throwing direction.
Next slide.
Yeah. That's these degrees. I think are the minimum. Probably more the 30 degrees I prefer. And in this position, I actually would like to see my athletes even a little bit more sitting, a little bit more down. That also the contact with left comes a little bit earlier when you drive horizontal forward. Yeah. The other aspect is the foot position. I learned and did always try to have 45 degree to the throwing direction. I think even can bit more to 60% degrees, and very important is that the hip land here. Yeah, I see since many years, since Javelin, everybody try to do the same as he in competition. But in competition, you have to realize that he was also very early and attacked early, and he then in the last moment only turned forward. He always tried in training. You see almost every video of him sideways. If he, as he was here in Kuortane a few years ago, he demonstrated the throw with shots, yeah, sideways, hip back, yeah, and start from there. From there you get, or can use your hip and get impulse from hip into your shoulder. Yeah, and that's it's very important. You can develop much more acceleration into the javelin and yeah, reach much higher release speed with this. As everybody can imagine, if you land forward and try to push your hip, that's not possible really. It's only moving just a few centimeters, and the only thing you can do is to use your have a great shoulder like Steve Beckley. Yeah, but I think also that he not reach really his potential like many other athletes in the past, Torkelsen, Pitkameki, yeah, a lot of other. Landing, what we heard yesterday in the biomechanic, to be not too late with the left leg contact, right-left. We obviously also try to land with the left really in front of the right landing foot, which yeah makes easier and faster for the contact. Yeah. One other point is the block. Yeah. I see often block like active backwards, and that's I think not good, because you only rotate you get weak in the left side, you pull often the hip back, yeah, and collapse with even the right hip. I think the way Jan is doing, and I also tried doing the cross step to close the shoulder and the left arm. Also Barbara get you in a better landing position, and if you then when you attack, also still for a little moment hold the left side, you get really strong block, the hip stays, and then you can go over. Yeah? And that's so the basic ideas which I had also good experience with other athletes, also in China. This Jing Chao was pretty good a year before. He threw in 2014 89 meters, but was too much in front. We fixed this a year later, and immediately he threw much different. Before he pulled also the tail down because he was in front, yeah, coming from more back, he could hit much better into it, and has good influence in the quality of the flying javelin.
Cool. So, as you can see, as we met, Uwe had some work to do. and I also. This is from 2006 Commonwealth Games.
But it looks not much different to 2010.
Yeah, no. Yes.
Yeah.
I have not actually footage after that in 2010, so it was this the whole way through. So, as I mentioned, as we met, then there was a lot to change and a lot of old habits to, a lot of new habits to work on, and also a lot of old habits to try and get rid of, which at 28 years of age, it's not always easy. So, our technical targets, I suppose, were, that's why we discussed this little intro into the technique. Actually, as I met Uwe, the fundamentals of using the hip for the throw, I didn't have. So I started training with a shot and just trying to do hip, shoulder, hip, shoulder, hip, shoulder. Body angle, leaning back, and delay of the throw, which needed a longer cross step and also just waiting a bit longer with the hand. Run up control, as Uwe will agree, as we met, I was pretty crazy on the runway, and every time tried to throw maybe 104 meters, which would end up going 46. And javelin tip control, which is still not quite perfect yet. But they were the main factors that we really had to... I pretty much had to start from the beginning and try to forget all what I'd been taught and work on what Uwe was showing me. And the physical targets, and I suppose what we have worked on and what have made a difference to increase the special power Pullovers I always had problems with because I had not stable shoulders, so actually I didn't really do them. Specific testing, increasing general power, my sprint jump lifting level was actually not too bad. Like I said, I thought it was very good. It was pretty good, and now it's much better. And building shoulder stability, obviously to handle and be stable to protect the shoulder in the throwing velocities, but also so that I could really do the specific training I needed to do.
Yeah, and not only shoulder, also elbow and even wrist was pretty weak, and yeah, we had actually a lot of work to do to stabilize this, and needs almost 1 year to get to a good base.
Yeah. So here are just some pictures briefly. This one is just prior to the delivery of the photo we saw before. So here, actually the height of the arm, and this is not too bad, and I worked on that after I had worked on a higher shoulder after I had some elbow problems in 2003. But here you can see just way in front, that's really not what I call this good tension. It's basically just the end of the range, which is quite slack through abdominal, no left side, and the tip is totally destroyed. It's a little bit, it's just for the idea, it's a little bit difficult because I couldn't get the pictures from the same angle, necessarily the same position. This was London, 2012, so you can start to see that maybe the tip is a tiny bit better, and I start to come with the body back a little bit more.
A little bit more close position.
Yeah. Moscow was my first, I suppose, making the Olympic final in London was a big deal for me because that was my breakthrough year with throwing 60 for the first time and just there. And I think, yeah, people wondered, who is this person coming from nowhere? So Moscow, I finished 5th in the final, and that was actually 5 months before a small ankle surgery. So we were starting to get on a good way, I think. Tip still a bit problem, but more closed, and it's...
I like also to say something about these only little changes, actually, because we did a good improvement in training, but always in competition, when she liked to throw far, she got to the old habits. Yeah, she only started with 28 or after 28 to understand Javelin, to work on the right way, but you cannot delay all habits. So it's very important not to do the mistake to let them, the youth and the kids, start with wrong technique. Teach them direct the right way.
Yeah, and obviously under maximal run-up speed, then that's, it's much harder to control than what you are doing nice and slow and controlled in training. So, yeah, we were getting there. This is from Rio, finished 6th. The final there, 64. And this was Gold Coast this year. A little bit low arm there, which is a shame, but that was the top result. So better tension and positions. But that preparation was a little bit different, actually, so which I'll talk about later. And there's just a side-by-side there from distance difference. And we wanted to just make the point that actually we can see what the differences are, but they maybe not look too dissimilar. But here on this side, we come back to this absolute destroying all the power, and really a very small percentage of my power going into the Javelin.
Yeah. I think also the standing picture here, it's not shows the main difference. The main difference this year was for me visible the first time in Sydney, as I arrived from India, and we met there for a competition and saw her on the warm-up, and very easy, and first time really sideways staying and get a little impulse. Still not what we focus on as a final target, but much better.
Much better. Getting there.
Yeah.
So to the physical side, actually I was happy from Simo's talking yesterday with the biomechanics that our testing protocols, what we do choose to test, are pretty relevant to the throwing. So in 2010, a little bit difference there. I didn't do snatch back then because I had not really shoulder stability, so it was a little bit of a problem to catch it. Not very strong there, and as I said, pullovers we didn't really do because I couldn't ever build them up.
Pullovers to chest or straight arm?
To chest.
To chest, yes, yep. But the pullovers, that's from a full hang at the bottom, full extension, which we show later in the demo. And these, so you can see the improvements under Uwe's watch. And as I said, I'll talk about 2018, but we put this in because in the preparation for 2018, you can see that my maximal results, I wasn't at the fittest or the strongest, most powerful that I have been before. And 2016 was definitely my peak so far for physical ability, which we will try to get back to. But it was a good result from this. It showed that.
There's still something.
Shows.
Still some improvement possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And showed me, I suppose, that. The power. There's many other important elements that go into a throw, obviously, than just flat out power. So. Cool. Okay, so the second part, training principles, basically how we spend a lot of, as I said before, a lot of time apart, and Uwe working in China and India, and I'm in Australia, and while he was in China, I travelled a little bit there, and in Europe we probably spent some more time together, but there's been big periods of time where we've been separated, and I suppose it's challenging, but it's also in a way helpful that I must understand what I'm doing, and I can't always rely on having Uwe there to say yes, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. I need to feel. I need to figure a lot out myself. I do have a background in human movement. My studies were sports science, human movement. So I actually write my own programs and then send to the boss for approval, and then we go from there. And I train by myself, actually. So basically the way we put a program together, this is the way I do it, and this is sort of a little thing that I've developed for myself to help keep things simple and help keep things on track. I used to have a habit of feeling, I'd see something on the internet of someone doing something, and then I thought that, I needed to be able to do that, but Uwe always reminded me that we are training as a javelin thrower, not some, I don't know, not some fitness cool latest tricks in the gym and things. So I came up with this idea that keeps me on track when I program for myself. And so we basically have all the areas of training, warm-ups, drills, running, jumping, technique, throwing, and obviously all the little components that make up those areas. Then we have to put it into the periodization. In Australia, we have a double, or for Australian season, requires a little bit of a double peak. So that can be a challenge. Not so much anymore, but when you're on the borderline of selection standards for major championships, then it's an issue because you need to come up to your best. We have our trials normally in March to April, and then obviously the major championships are in around August. So it can pose a little bit of a challenge for us Aussie folk. So we start with general conditioning, and basically we just have the purpose of that block of training underneath. Strength, endurance, stability, corrective, functional flexibility is the purpose of that area of training. And then we go to general power. The periods of time on which these blocks of training run obviously differ depending on what's coming up in the season and how much time we've got. Anaerobic power, maximal strength, reactive power, functional stability start to come in. A special power block after that, building on specific strength, maximal power, and maximal throwing power into special throwing, which is the transfer of the throwing power and speed, and the maintenance of maximal power. And then the competition peak, which is just basically neural stimulation and freshening up. Then I come to a table that looks a bit like this. So, as Thomas said yesterday in the strength and conditioning, in terms of prioritizing areas of training, so we basically have all the training areas in the program the whole year through, and the way we structure it in is that one area takes priority over another during whatever block you're working in. So I have this table in my programming. These are just some examples of the type of running for each, to meet the purpose of each block. Jumping, there. All building on each other, and like I said, different areas taking priority over others. Yep. So if there's any questions at the end about some specific things, I think, in terms of content, what we do, obviously we'll show specific things, what we do in the training demo later, but you know, there's so many ways to come to peak condition. So, you know, the exercises that I might choose can be totally different to what another athlete does, but we, you know, come to the same point. So I suppose that's working in the principle of it, and this table I use just as a base, that there's still a lot of flexibility allowed in what we are doing and the training. Cool. So in 2018, obviously something happened and the results were different for us, and the 8 years of hard work and things in place that I'd done with Uva started to come out on the track. In 2017 at the World Championships, I didn't make the final, and I reached that championships actually pretty burnt out, and I'd thrown a very small personal best about a month before, which I'm not really sure how I did actually. But the training preparation leading into 2017 was really up and down, and I just had really persistent fatigue and a real, I can only call it intolerance to training loads actually. So in the lead up when I got to Europe, the preparation was really up and down with sessions, and some days I turn up to training and there was not much we could do, and then other days I had a little bit more energy and I could do a bit more. But I'm not sure if you can read that. It's not bright enough.
But with the burnout, it starts not only in 2017, the first sign we had also in 2015 before Beijing, only didn't realize what it is, and only as Kathryn met some guy from from Melbourne who was in the team for London. He told her direct after seeing her for 2 minutes what happened.
That I perhaps needed some rest. So when the water is boiling, take it off the heat. And that was me. And I mean, I've always had very high expectations and big dreams and things that I wanted to achieve. And I suppose that my progression over my career, maybe led me a little bit to just work harder and harder and harder. And as I improved, I just worked so hard for a long time. And it came to a head last year, and I was on the runway in London in the World Championships, and I really had nothing. It was quite a bizarre experience, and I just had no power. I had no feeling. It was very strange. So I met the team sports psychologist at the hotel, and we started work from there. So basically, when I got back here, the priority was rest and recovery, and I had, we didn't have much time. We had 7 months before the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast, and of course that was going to be the big thing because it's at home. It's my last Commonwealth Games, and everyone's there, my family. It was just going to be really cool, and I really didn't know what was going to happen. So I had 2 months, total rest. And really had no desire for training or Javelin. Wasn't that I didn't enjoy it anymore, but I just didn't have the energy. So Uwe was away. He'd started in India, so I worked with Mark, who's the sports psychologist, and the priority was rest. And when I did start back training, we had a reduction of training load, a significant reduction of training load, as in I went into Commonwealth Games having done about 40% of the previous training that I'd done years before. That was the extent of the load, and the days where I had rest days programmed in, but then I would need to take extra rest days. The session that was planned, I just had to let it go. A reduction of training results, so I just was trying to do as much training as that my body would allow, without going backwards. I reduced my internal pressure, and I really had no choice. So the internal pressure was not feeling guilty for missing training, not feeling bad because today at training I didn't throw 65 metres or again and again and again like I had done in the past. We really had to just go back and do the repetitions. And we had a results, not a results approach, we had a process approach. So I was always very stuck on results and almost couldn't get. Uwe had told me over and over again, allow your technique to do the work in competition, allow your technique to do the work in competition, and I could not. When I got to the moment, I was so focused on what that number would be at the end of the day that it really got in the way of me achieving my potential. And I think that's a common issue for athletes. And when they get into the competition, obviously you want to throw as far as you can, but we try too hard. So then once I started to recover a little bit, we started with how we were going to approach the competitions in the Gold Coast. Concentration. So the training versus competition results was this was always the issue that I had, and that it's actually also very common that Uwe would, anytime I did a competition, and as he mentioned before, the photos that were taken when in training, my training throws would always look very different to competition throws. And I could throw a really long way in training off short, controlled running, but I couldn't throw any further. It's not I had good results at an international level, and it wasn't that my training, my competition results went down significantly from my training results, but I just couldn't improve it when I added more speed into the competition where it should lift. It just always stayed on a level. And the technique that Uwe saw in training, he never saw on from the competition. And also in the warm-up, which is common. They're big throws in warm-up. Athletes do it, and competition, way less. So technical cues during competition, we started to do a little bit, this was with Mark, the sports psychologist. We went to some smaller competitions around the... I had started to practice this in training, of course, but then to apply what we'd been working on into competition. So we started off with little, small club competitions, which I hadn't done for many, many years. And all the idea was to practice what I'd been doing in training in the competition and try to let go of how far it was going to fly. And my first attempt at that, I threw a personal best of 66.73. I was 10 centimetres off the Australian record. And so much so that worked, that I had my average distance of my top 5 competitions, I only did 7 competitions anyway, was just over 67 metres. So I went from 66, then I broke the Australian record with 67, then I broke it again with 68, and then we came to Commonwealth Games and I broke it again, and I also had a 68 metre throw in that competition. And we just worked on things, pre-competition routine, competition routine, just understanding myself better and what my needs are, I suppose, managing energy going into competitions, and obviously during competition, what we're focusing on, what we're not focusing on, and yeah. So at this point in my career, we like to keep things simple, and there's a quote that says the most complicated thing is to be simple, which I think is true. But that's what we try to do. Basically, my preparation just covers physical, technical, and mental, and we just look at elements in those areas to work on and improve. And I think I just put this in because I suppose maybe I'm a little bit unique. So in terms of program planning, the previous training that I have done and that is in my body is, nowhere near, or it's way more than what I need to do now. So for me to come into peak condition, I need a lot less work, which is good. And I can recover more, but I need to. That's what I need to do at the age I'm at. So, in terms of program planning, obviously it has to be specific to the athlete's age and the athlete's style. What I mean by that is, we all like to look at what the top throwers are doing and not necessarily copy what they're doing, but I think that's a good thing to do. But I think when you do that, you need to pick the right athlete that you want to model model their idea. So, for a person of my size, for example, there's, as Uwe said, there's the fundamentals, there's the truths of Javelin and the basics, and they will always remain the truths and the basics. But in developing your own style, for me, I wouldn't copy Barbara, for example, because she is twice as long arms and I am so small. So I think it's important for when athletes, like to look at other athletes, the top ones, that they choose an appropriate athlete and to work to the athlete's strengths and advantages. As I said, I don't have big, long levers. I'm a short power. My speed and power is my strength and advantage, so that's what we model the work that we do on. Whereas a longer thrower, different timing, different
rhythm, which made also a very huge different this year to start not that early as she started normally her attack of the throw, and before she destroyed her throw completely, and now she is in much better position. Yeah, even if the throw at the Gold Coast was good, but still way too early. Yeah, the
Was
foot
okay.
comes also a little bit forward. You saw the arm
Little
short.
bit low.
Yeah, and we have still to do work, but she is now able to give her the time. Also, not only in training, also use little competitions to practice what she learned or practice in training, also under competition.
And I was very excited when Uwe said that the Commonwealth Games final was the first time he saw in competition what I did in training. So we
yeah, and that was also the different this year that she really not focused on results from the first little competition there in Ringwood till the end at the Gold Coast, only looking for her technique.
Yeah, and
Even
the same
if
thing.
if it's a little bit failed.
Failed
Because of-
technique.
No, it was good.
He's a hard man to please, I have to say. Yeah, thank you. I hope that's something.
Thank you very much. And any questions?
Yes, thank you for a very open-hearted and nice presentation.
No worries.
I just want to ask you, you had a slide with the competition routines. Did you find that establishing set competition routines helped you in a mental way to relax and focus on what you do, not to worry so much about what you're supposed to do?
Yes, during the competition, definitely. Pre-competition, actually, I'm a pretty flexible person, and I don't have some rigid process I have to go through. But like I said, just knowing a little bit more what I need, how to manage my energy, is pretty much as far as I go. But during competition, it was more learning like not to block out distraction, but to have something to focus on. Like, you know, if you're watching TV and you're really absorbed and somebody yells at you and you can't hear them, it's not because you push them out just to block out distractions, because you are focused on something, and that's what takes up your you know, obviously between throws there's a bit of time to, and you can get a little bit out of control. I think for me, in between the competition routine between throws, we've refined it a little bit, but I think I was always, you know, I wasn't too bad. It was when I was on the runway where my mind was. And as I came down to approach the throw, then, I would just try too hard. So it was just working on narrowing where my mind is when I'm on the runway. Yeah.
Kind of off of that, were there any differences in going to a small meet and practicing that routine, and then going to, I assume, Commonwealth, a major international competition, where there's more a gap in between that? Was there any issue with that?
Actually, I was pretty lucky at the Commonwealth Games when I saw the start list. I was a bit disappointed because I thought, come on, but there were 8 in it. And so when I saw the start list, I was like, phew, there's not 20 minutes sitting. However, at our national championships, and that will still be, that's yet to be, met, I suppose. Previously, yeah, the longer the competition is, you can get a bit bored, and you come on. But our national championships had a qualification round with 16 in it, and I was throwing right at the end. So that was a little chance to, and I actually did mess up the process on the throw. So that was a little chance to, to test that and see, and then we know that we can work on it. Yes, so we'll see.
You have two really good throwers in Australia besides yourself. You have Kelsey Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do anything together, like testing or biomechanics or any training? Or you just do totally separate?
I said to Uwe yesterday when Andreas said how the national system is in Germany, and I thought, we do not have something like that in Australia. We have the facilities and the biomechanics and everything, but our coaches actually aren't really well supported, I think, by the National Federation, and there's really no system to bring athletes and coaches together and work together, which is a little bit unfortunate, but...
So if you want to do biomechanics, you go to AIS and do it, and Kelsey goes whenever she feels like it.
Exactly, yeah. So.
And even we went a few times with the Chinese team to the AIS, and even in this almost 2.5 months, we never did anything together. No.
So that's a
was almost
little bit separate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also use the gym when we are not there. Something like this.
Yeah. It's not really the same. Mm.
Any other questions? Yep.
Yeah, actually, good question. Because I've always been a real shoulder thrower, so my shoulder power is very high, but I didn't ever really use my legs. So the preparation for 2018, when I started back at training, I actually focused on my legs a lot more and kind of a ground-up approach instead. Which I think was beneficial, and obviously beneficial. It's that's the base for the throw. As Andreas said yesterday, the stability and the balance in that throwing position. So I think the working on that this year was definitely beneficial and will continue. Yeah. Yeah, 15 mainly. Yeah,
but no surgeries during the whole of your career. That's exceptional. That's exceptional.
Okay, that's a lie. I had in 2013 on this ankle a little spur bit of bone that on my block that was causing pain. So I needed just an arthroscope to get that out, but. Otherwise, elbow, shoulders, yes. Still original condition. A bit of wear and tear, but in my shoulder actually in the training demo later we will go through some of my shoulder stuff because actually I have the labrum is torn pretty much the whole way round, and it's a really special shoulder care program that I have to surgery is not an option at this point. It would end my career, so we have to manage it conservatively, and there's a lot I do to build up and maintain the throwing power that I can get to with the condition that my shoulder is in. Yeah.
And I use pretty much the same routine also for my athletes. And even before, as I started in 2011, we started with my Chinese athlete who has a big shoulder problem. He was weak, like, yeah, I never saw before. Described maybe the best. So we started with him and fixed this problem and got him to almost 90 meters.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Kathryn and Ove.
Thank you.